The gunshot that killed Adelaide's father echoed through her mind every single day. Though 3 years had passed since that February morning in 1881, when she found him bleeding out in the general store they owned together in Provo, Utah. Adelaide Grace had been 20 years old then, forced to become something harder than the laughing girl who used to dance at the spring socials. Now 23, she ran the store with an iron will that made grown men nervous and kept her heart locked behind walls thicker than the adobe buildings that lined the dusty streets. The townspeople whispered about her coldness, how she never smiled, how she conducted business with the warmth of a January wind cutting down from the Wasatch Mountains. They said she was too serious, too cold, that no man would ever want a woman who looked at the world through such frozen eyes. Adelaide heard the whispers and did not care. Caring was what got people killed. Her father had cared about everyone who walked through his door, had extended credit to families who could not pay, had trusted the wrong person who came in demanding money from the cash box. That trust had cost him his life, and Adelaide swore she would never make the same mistake. She kept a loaded shotgun under the counter, counted every penny twice, and turned away anyone who could not pay in full. The spring of 1884 arrived with unusual warmth, melting the mountain snow earlier than expected and turning the streets into rivers of mud. Adelaide stood behind her counter on a Tuesday morning, reviewing her ledgers with the same meticulous attention she gave everything, when the door opened, and a man walked in trailing mud across her clean floor. She looked up with a scowl already forming. "There's a boot scraper outside for a reason." The man stopped, glanced down at his boots, then back at her face. "You're absolutely right. My apologies, madam." To her surprise, he turned around and walked back outside. Through the window, she watched him scrape his boots thoroughly, then pull out a handkerchief and wipe them down before entering again. This time his steps left only faint prints. "Better?" he asked, and there was no sarcasm in his voice, just a genuine question. Adelaide found herself slightly off balance, unused to anyone actually listening to her. Better. He was tall, probably around 25 or 26, with brown hair that needed a trim and blue eyes that held none of the calculation she had learned to watch for. His clothes were worn but clean, typical cowboy gear, weathered from work rather than neglect. A faded blue shirt, leather vest, and chaps that had seen plenty of use. "I'm looking for work," he said, approaching the counter but stopping at a respectful distance. "Name's Aaron Lawson. I'm good with horses, decent with cattle, and I can fix just about anything that breaks. Saw your sign about needing someone to make deliveries." Adelaide studied him with the cold assessment that made most men squirm. She had indeed posted a notice seeking someone to deliver large orders to the ranches outside town. Her current delivery boy had run off to try his luck at silver mining in Park City. "The pay is $2 a week plus meals when you're working," she said flatly. "You'll need your own horse. Deliveries are twice weekly, sometimes more. You break anything, you pay for it. You steal anything, I'll have the sheriff on you before sunset." Most men would have bristled at such blunt terms. Aaron just nodded. "That's fair. I've got my own horse, a good mare named Clementine. She's steady with heavy loads. As for stealing, madam, I was raised better than that. My mother would come back and haunt me if I ever took what wasn't mine." Despite herself, Adelaide felt the corner of her mouth twitch, though she suppressed any hint of a smile. "When can you start?" "Today, if you need me." "Tomorrow's soon enough. Be here at 7 in the morning. I'll have the first delivery ready." Aaron nodded, then did something unexpected. He extended his hand across the counter. "Thank you, Miss Grace. I appreciate the opportunity." Adelaide stared at his hand for a long moment. Physical contact was something she avoided. But this was business, and refusing a handshake would be strange even by her standards. She placed her hand in his briefly, noting the calluses that spoke of hard work and the gentle way his fingers barely pressed around hers before releasing. 7 sharp, she repeated. I don't tolerate lateness. No, madam, I wouldn't expect you to. After he left, Adelaide stood staring at the door longer than necessary, irritated with herself for noticing the way he walked with an easy confidence, or how his voice had held none of the mockery she had grown accustomed to from men in this town. She shook her head and returned to her ledgers. Noticing such things was irrelevant and potentially dangerous. Aaron Lawson appeared the next morning at 6:45, his horse already saddled and ready. Adelaide was still loading crates onto the small wagon she kept out back when she heard his footsteps. "You're early," she said without looking up from the crate she was wrestling with. "Figured you might need help loading. Those look heavy." They were heavy. Flour, sugar, coffee, and canned goods destined for the Morrison Ranch 15 miles north. Adelaide had been struggling with them but would rather have dislocated her shoulder than admit it. "I can manage." "I'm sure you can," Aaron said easily. "Mind if I help anyway? We'll get on the road faster." The logic was sound enough that Adelaide could not argue without seeming obstinate for its own sake. She stepped back and gestured curtly at the remaining crates. Aaron lifted them with practiced ease, arranging them in the wagon bed with an attention to weight distribution that showed experience. "The Morrisons are expecting this before noon," Adelaide said, handing him a paper with the itemized order. "They'll pay on delivery. Count the money before you leave and make sure it matches. Don't let them short you. Don't accept IOUs or promises. Understood? The trail forks at Willow Creek. Take the left path. The right one's washed out from snow melt. Left at Willow Creek. Got it?" Adelaide kept finding things to tell him, instructions piling on instructions, until Aaron finally said gently, "Miss Grace, I promise I'll take care of everything. Your goods will get there safe, and I'll bring back every penny they owe you." Something in his voice made her stop. Not irritation at her hectoring, just a calm assurance that he understood how much this mattered. She realized she was treating him like he was stupid rather than simply new, and that was unfair even by her exacting standards. "Fine. Go on then." She watched him drive the wagon out of the alley behind her store, then forced herself to return to work. She had inventory to conduct and accounts to balance. She certainly did not have time to wonder if she had been too harsh, or if Aaron would return and tell her to find someone else to order around. But Aaron came back that afternoon with an empty wagon, the correct amount of money, and no complaints. He helped her unload the empty crates without being asked and turned down her offer of payment for that day. "I'll take my wages at the end of the week, if that's all right with you. Easier for both our bookkeeping." Over the following weeks, Aaron became a fixture around the store. He made deliveries Tuesday and Friday mornings and often showed up other days to help with tasks Adelaide had not asked him to do. When a loose board on her front step became a tripping hazard, he fixed it. When the hinge on the storeroom door started squeaking loud enough to wake the dead, he oiled it. When Mrs. Patterson came in with 3 squirming children and Adelaide's face took on its customary look of pained forbearance. Aaron distracted the kids with stories about his horse while their mother shopped in peace. Adelaide did not know what to make of him. She kept waiting for the other shoe to drop, for him to ask for a raise or special favors, for his kindness to reveal itself as strategy. But Aaron simply kept being helpful in his quiet, unobtrusive way, never asking for anything beyond his agreed wages. "Why do you do that?" She finally asked one morning in early May after he had swept the boardwalk in front of her store, though it was not part of his job. Aaron looked up from where he was putting away the broom. Do what? All of this. The repairs, the cleaning. I'm not paying you for it. He considered the question seriously. My pa always said if you're going to do something, do it right. You've given me fair work for fair wages. Seems right to make sure you get your money's worth. You've given me far more than $2 a week of work. Then I guess you're getting a bargain. He said it with such straightforward simplicity that Adelaide could not detect any guile. She found herself studying him when she thought he was not looking, trying to solve the puzzle he represented. Aaron never drank at the saloon, never visited the women who worked above it, never gambled or got into fights. On Sundays, he attended the Methodist church, sitting in the back pew with his hat in his hands. He was polite to everyone, tipped his hat to the ladies, helped old Mr. Chen carry supplies to his laundry, and treated Adelaide with the same steady courtesy no matter how sharp her words became. The town noticed. Of course the town noticed. Provo was small enough that everyone knew everyone else's business, and Adelaide Grace, having a man around her store, was noteworthy enough to generate considerable speculation. I hear you've got yourself a beau, Mrs. Patterson said one afternoon while purchasing thread, her eyes bright with curiosity. Mr. Lawson is my delivery man, nothing more, Adelaide said icily. Oh, but he's around here quite a bit, isn't he? And such a nice young man, easy on the eyes too. Adelaide felt her spine stiffen. I hired him to do a job, which he does. I'm not interested in anything else. Mrs. Patterson's smile turned pitying. You know, dear, you can't stay closed off forever. Your father wouldn't have wanted you to be alone. The mention of her father made Adelaide's hands clench beneath the counter. That will be 15 cents for the thread. After Mrs. Patterson left, Adelaide stood gripping the counter's edge, trying to push down the anger and grief that still sat in her chest like a stone. She did not want anyone's pity. She did not want their advice. She did not want them speculating about Aaron or her or anything else. You all right? She jerked her head up. Aaron had come in from the back, probably heard the whole exchange. His face showed concern but not the cloying pity that Mrs. Patterson's had held. I'm fine. She shouldn't have mentioned your father like that. It wasn't kind. Adelaide blinked, surprised that he understood what had bothered her most. People in this town don't know when to mind their own business. That's the truth in any small town. Aaron hesitated, then said carefully, For what it's worth, I think you've done an incredible job with this store. Can't be easy running a business alone. It's not about easy or hard, it's about survival. Even so, you should be proud. Adelaide did not know what to say to that. Pride was not something she had thought about. She had been too busy working to keep the store afloat, to prove to everyone that she did not need help, that she could handle everything herself. I should get the Morrison order ready for tomorrow, she said instead, retreating into the familiar territory of work. Aaron nodded and did not push, which she appreciated more than she would have admitted. June arrived with blazing heat that baked the streets hard and made the store feel like an oven by midday. Adelaide had just finished helping a rancher load salt licks into his wagon when she felt dizzy. She gripped the wagon's side, willing the world to stop tilting. Miss Grace. The rancher's voice seemed to come from far away, her knees buckled. She felt herself falling and then strong arms caught her, lowering her carefully to the ground. Someone get water, Aaron's voice, sharp with command. Adelaide's eyes fluttered open. She was sitting on the ground, her back against the store's wall, and Aaron was kneeling beside her with a canteen. Small sips, he said, holding it to her lips. The water was warm but wet, and she drank gratefully. The world gradually stopped spinning. When's the last time you ate? Aaron asked. Adelaide tried to remember, Toast at breakfast, but that had been 6 hours ago. She had been too busy to stop for lunch. I had breakfast. That's not enough, especially in this heat. Aaron looked around at the small crowd that had gathered. Show's over, folks. She just needs food and rest. Once they dispersed, Aaron helped her to her feet and guided her firmly through the store and up the stairs to her living quarters above. Adelaide wanted to protest, but did not trust her legs yet. The rooms were sparse and neat. A small kitchen, a bedroom, a sitting area with a single chair and a table covered in more ledgers. Aaron sat her down at the table and went straight to her kitchen like he owned it. "You can't just," Adelaide started. "I'm making you food. You can be mad about it after you eat." He found bread, cheese, and some dried apples, assembling a simple meal with efficient movements. He set the plate in front of her along with a glass of water. "Eat, all of it. I'm not a child. Then stop acting like one and take care of yourself." Adelaide glared at him, but Aaron just looked back steadily, no anger in his eyes, just determination. She picked up a piece of bread and ate it, then the cheese, then the apples, surprised by how hungry she actually was. Aaron watched until she finished, then said, "You work yourself too hard. The store will survive if you take time to eat. You don't understand what it takes to keep this place running. I understand you're one person doing the work of three. I understand you're trying to prove something. But killing yourself won't prove anything except that everyone who said you couldn't handle it was right." The words stung because they held truth. Adelaide looked away. "I can't afford to be weak. Taking care of yourself isn't weakness. It's sense." Aaron pulled out the other chair and sat down, his long legs folded awkwardly in the small space. "Can I ask you something?" Adelaide tensed but nodded. "Why do you do this? Push yourself until you collapse, keep everyone at arm's length, refuse help even when you need it." "I don't need help." "Everyone needs help sometimes. The last time I trusted someone, my father died." The words came out before Adelaide could stop them, sharp and bitter. Aaron's expression softened. "What happened?" Adelaide had not talked about it, not really. The sheriff had asked questions. People had offered condolences, but no one had actually asked her to talk about what happened. Maybe that was why the words suddenly spilled out. A man came into the store. Young, probably 19 or 20. Said his family needed supplies, but they did not have money until they sold their cattle. My father believed him, gave him $100 worth of goods on credit. She stared down at her empty plate. The man came back 2 weeks later, demanded more money. Said my father owed him for keeping quiet about supposedly cheating customers, which was a lie. When my father refused and threatened to get the sheriff, the man shot him. Took the money from the cash box and ran. Did they catch him? No, he disappeared, probably left Utah entirely. Adelaide's voice was hollow. My father was bleeding on the floor, and all I could think was that he had trusted someone and that trust killed him. I swore I would never make that mistake. Aaron was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was gentle. That man was a criminal. What he did had nothing to do with your father's kindness and everything to do with his own rotten character. Closing yourself off from everyone won't bring your father back. It will keep me from getting hurt again. Maybe, but it will also keep you from living." Adelaide stood abruptly. "I should get back to the store. It's closed. I turned the sign and locked the door when I brought you up. You had no right. You collapsed in the street. You think anyone's going to complain that the store closed early so you could recover?" Aaron stood too, his height making her small kitchen feel even smaller. "Take the rest of the day off. Rest. Eat dinner. The world won't end if you're not working every single minute." He left before she could argue further, his boots heavy on the stairs. Adelaide stood in her kitchen, angry and confused, and something else she could not quite name. No one had taken care of her in 3 years. She had not realized how exhausting it was to be strong all the time until someone gave her permission to stop, just for a moment. She did rest, though it felt wrong. Made herself a proper dinner, though she ate it standing up. Went to bed earlier than usual and lay awake thinking about Aaron's words and the concern in his eyes, and how she had not wanted him to leave even though his presence confused her. The next morning, Adelaide opened the store at her usual time, determined to prove yesterday had been an aberration. Aaron arrived for the Morrison delivery and said nothing about the previous day except, "You look better. Did you sleep?" "Yes." "Good." He loaded the wagon and left, and Adelaide felt oddly disappointed that he had not pushed or prodded or made her talk more. But over the following weeks, small things changed. Aaron brought extra food when he came for deliveries, casually mentioning that his landlady had made too much and he could not eat it all. Sandwiches, fresh bread, once even a still warm apple pie. Adelaide knew he was making sure she ate, but the fiction allowed her to accept without feeling pitied. He also started closing the store for her lunch hour, ignoring her protests that she did not need breaks. "Even banks close for lunch," he said reasonably. "An hour won't hurt business, and you need time to eat without customers interrupting." Adelaide argued but found herself complying. The break was nice, though she would not say so aloud. July brought the Pioneer Day celebration, a major event in Utah marking the day Brigham Young and his followers had entered the Salt Lake Valley. Provo always hosted a big celebration with races, dancing, and fireworks. Adelaide normally avoided it, staying in her store with the doors locked while the town celebrated outside. This year, Aaron came by the afternoon of the 24th and found her preparing to do exactly that. "You're not going to the celebration." "I don't celebrate." "Have you ever been to one of the celebrations?" Adelaide thought back. She had gone with her father when she was younger before everything changed. They had been happy then, eating roasted corn and watching the horse races, her father laughing at something someone said. "Once," she said shortly. "A long time ago." "Come this year?" "No." "Why not? I don't see the point." Aaron leaned against her counter, studying her with those perceptive blue eyes. "You know, hiding in here while everyone else enjoys themselves isn't protecting you, it's just making you lonely." "I'm not lonely. Aren't you?" The question hit harder than it should have. Adelaide turned away, straightening items on the shelf that did not need straightening. "I have work to do." "Work will still be here tomorrow. Life won't wait, though. It just passes you by while you're busy building walls." He paused. "Come with me. Just for an hour. If you hate it, I'll walk you home and never mention it again." "Why do you care?" "Because I think somewhere under all that ice, there's still the person you used to be, the one who liked celebrations and dancing and being around people. She deserves a chance to come out, even just for one evening." Adelaide wanted to refuse, should refuse, but something in his voice made her hesitate. Aaron was not pitying her or judging her. He just seemed to genuinely want her to enjoy herself. "1 hour," she heard herself say. "And I'm not dancing." Aaron's face lit up with a smile that transformed his usually serious expression. "1 hour. No dancing. I promise." They closed the store together and walked toward the town square where the celebration was in full swing. Music filled the air, fiddles and guitars playing lively tunes while people danced and children ran between adults' legs. The smell of roasting meat and fresh bread made Adelaide's stomach growl despite her nervousness. "Hungry?" Aaron asked. "A little." He bought them both plates of food from the community tables, piled high with roasted chicken, potatoes, fresh biscuits, and berry cobbler. They found a spot on the edge of the festivities where Adelaide felt less exposed and sat on the grass. Adelaide could not remember the last time she had eaten a meal outdoors, surrounded by celebration. It felt strange and foreign, yet not entirely unpleasant. Aaron did not force conversation, seeming content to sit and watch the festivities. "Thank you," she said quietly after a while. "For what?" "For making me come. I didn't realize how much I'd been." She struggled for the word. "Hiding," Aaron supplied gently. "I was going to say isolated, but hiding works too." They watched three men start a log-splitting contest, competing to see who could split a cord of wood fastest. The crowd cheered and placed friendly bets. Adelaide found herself smiling at their antics, particularly when one man's axe got stuck and he had to wrestle it free while his friends heckled him. "I remember you, you know," Aaron said suddenly. Adelaide looked at him in surprise. "What?" "From before. 4 years ago I came through Provo on a cattle drive, stopped at your father's store to buy supplies. You were there, laughing at something your father said. You recommended the canned peaches, said they were the best in Utah. I bought 6 cans. He smiled at the memory. "You were right, they were good." Adelaide stared at him. "I don't remember that. No reason you would. I was just another cowboy passing through, but I remembered you because you seemed so happy, full of light." His voice softened. "When I came back to Provo this spring and saw the store, I hoped maybe I'd see you again. Then I walked in and you were there, but the light was gone. Made me sad to see it. My father died. The light died with him. I don't think light dies. I think it just gets buried sometimes. And maybe, with time and care, it can be uncovered again." Adelaide did not know what to say. No one had ever spoken to her like this, with such gentle certainty that she could be more than the cold, closed-off person she had become. The music changed to a waltz, slower and more romantic. Couples moved onto the dancing area, swaying together under the strings of lanterns that had been lit as twilight fell. "I know you said no dancing," Aaron said, "but would you make an exception for one dance? Just one." Adelaide's instinct was to refuse, but something stopped her. Maybe it was the memory he had shared, the reminder that she had once been different. Maybe it was the way he had been so patient with her, never pushing too hard, just consistently showing her kindness. Maybe it was simply that she wanted to feel normal again, just for a moment. "One dance," she said. "But I'm terrible at it. I haven't danced in years. I'm not much better. We'll be terrible together." He led her to the edge of the dancing area, placing one hand carefully on her waist and taking her hand with the other. Adelaide felt stiff and awkward, hyper-aware of every place their bodies touched. But Aaron just started moving slow and simple, and gradually she began to follow. "See," he said softly, "you haven't forgotten, my feet have forgotten. I just stepped on yours. I didn't notice." They swayed together, not quite matching the rhythm of the music, but finding their own. Adelaide kept her eyes on Aaron's shoulder, afraid to look up and see what his expression might hold. But she could feel his warmth through his shirt, could smell soap and leather and something else distinctly him. "Adelaide," he said quietly, and the use of her first name made her finally look up. His blue eyes were serious and tender. "I know you're scared. I know trusting people is hard after what happened, but you should know that I care about you. Not as an employer, not as a friend, but as something more. I've cared for a while now." Her heart hammered against her ribs. "Aaron, I can't. I'm not asking you to jump into anything. I'm just being honest about my feelings. You can do whatever you want with that information. Tell me to leave and I'll go. Tell me you need time and I'll wait. Tell me there's a chance someday and I'll be here." His hand tightened slightly on her waist. "But I couldn't keep pretending I only cared about you as a boss. That would be lying, and I don't lie." Adelaide felt panic rising. This was exactly what she had been afraid of, why she kept people at a distance. Caring led to pain. Trusting led to loss. She should step away, End this now before it went any further, but she did not step away. She kept dancing, kept looking into Aaron's eyes, and felt something crack in the walls she had built so carefully. "I don't know if I can do this," she whispered. "I don't know if I can let myself care again." "That's all right. Like I said, I'm not asking you to decide anything tonight. I just wanted you to know the truth." They finished the dance in silence, and when the music ended, Aaron walked her back to her store. They stood outside her door as the sounds of celebration continued behind them. "Thank you for tonight," Adelaide said, "for the food and the dance and the honesty. Thank you for giving it a chance." Aaron tipped his hat. "See you Tuesday for the Morrison delivery." "Yes, Tuesday." She watched him walk away, his long stride carrying him back toward the boarding house where he rented a room. Then she went upstairs to her apartment and lay in bed, staring at the ceiling and feeling confused and terrified and, underneath it all, the tiniest spark of something that might have been hope. The next few weeks were awkward. Adelaide found herself hyper-aware of Aaron whenever he was near, noticing things she had trained herself not to see. The way his shirt pulled across his shoulders when he lifted heavy crates, the crinkles at the corners of his eyes when he smiled, the gentle way he spoke to customers, making everyone feel heard and valued. He had said he would not push, and he kept that promise. Nothing changed in how he acted around her. He was still helpful, still kind, still patient with her sharp edges. But now Adelaide knew what lay beneath his actions, and it changed everything. She caught herself watching him more often than she should. Started looking forward to Tuesday and Friday mornings with an anticipation that had nothing to do with deliveries. Found excuses to keep him at the store longer, asking questions about the orders or the customers or his horse. It was Mrs. Patterson who finally confronted her, cornering Adelaide one afternoon when the store was empty. "You're sweet on him," she said with certainty. "I don't know what you're talking about. Aaron Lawson. That poor boy's been making eyes at you for months, and now you're finally looking back." Mrs. Patterson smiled. "It's about time. He's my employee, nothing more." "Oh, honey, you can tell yourself that, but I've got eyes. I've seen how you watch him when you think no one's looking, and I've definitely seen how he watches you all the time." She patted Adelaide's hand. "There's nothing wrong with being happy, you know. Your father would have wanted that for you." After she left, Adelaide stood behind her counter and admitted the truth to herself. She was falling for Aaron Lawson. Despite all her walls and defenses and determined isolation, he had somehow slipped through. His steady kindness had worn away at her resistance like water on stone, patient and persistent, until she could not remember why she had fought so hard. The realization terrified her. August arrived with thunderstorms that rolled down from the mountains, dramatic and powerful. Adelaide was closing the store one evening when rain began pouring down, so heavy she could barely see across the street. She had locked the door and was preparing to make a run for it when someone pounded on the glass. Aaron stood outside, soaked to the bone, his hat dripping water in streams. Adelaide unlocked the door and pulled him inside. "What are you doing out in this? Wanted to make sure you were all right. These mountain storms can be dangerous." "I'm fine, but you're soaked through." She grabbed a towel from the back room and handed it to him. "Why didn't you just go home? Your place was closer." He dried his face and hair, which made it stick up in odd directions. Despite everything, Adelaide felt warmth bloom in her chest at the sight. Lightning flashed, followed almost immediately by thunder that shook the building. The lights flickered and died, plunging them into darkness relieved only by the fading daylight through the windows. "Damn," Adelaide muttered. "The power lines must be down. You have candles in the storage room." They felt their way through the dark store, Adelaide leading since she knew the layout by heart. She found the candles and matches, and soon soft light pushed back the shadows. Rain hammered on the roof and windows, a constant drumming that made the store feel like a shelter against the storm. "You should wait it out here," Adelaide said. "No sense going back out in that." They sat on crates in the back room, candles flickering between them, and listened to the storm rage outside. It felt intimate in a way that made Adelaide's heart race. Just the two of them, closed off from the world with nothing but honesty between them. "Can I ask you something?" Adelaide said after a long stretch of comfortable silence. "Anything." "Why me? You could have any woman in this town. Mrs. Patterson's daughter thinks you're handsome. So does the preacher's niece. They're both nice, pretty, and they actually smile. So why are you interested in the cold, serious woman who runs the general store?" Aaron was quiet for a moment, his face thoughtful in the candlelight. "Those women are nice, sure, but they're not you. You're strong and smart and capable. You survived something that would have broken most people, and you didn't just survive, you built something. You kept your father's dream alive even when it would have been easier to give up." He leaned forward slightly. "And you're not cold. You're hurt. There's a difference. Cold is something you are. Hurt is something that happened to you." Tears stung Adelaide's eyes, appearing before she could stop them. "I'm so tired of being hurt." "I know." Aaron reached across the space between them and took her hand. His palm was warm and calloused and solid. "I know. And I can't promise you'll never hurt again. Life hurts sometimes. But I can promise I'll never deliberately hurt you. I'll never betray your trust or make you regret caring about me." "How can you promise that?" "Because I saw what caring and losing did to you. I watched you shut yourself away from the world to avoid that pain. I'd rather cut off my own hand than be the cause of that kind of damage." His thumb brushed across her knuckles. "I'm not that man who shot your father. I'm not a liar or a thief. I'm just a cowboy who thinks you're the most remarkable woman he's ever met and wants a chance to prove he's worthy of you." Adelaide looked at their joined hands, then up at his face. She saw only sincerity there, no calculation, no hidden motives. Just Aaron, steady and patient and kind, asking for a chance. "I'm afraid," she whispered. "I know. That's all right. Being afraid doesn't mean you can't try." She thought about her father, who had loved openly and generously right up until the end, who had taught her that people were mostly good, that kindness mattered, that life was meant to be lived with an open heart. He would be sad to see what she had become, how she had let fear turn her bitter and isolated. Maybe it was time to be brave in a different way. Not the brittle hardness she had cultivated, but the courage to be vulnerable again. "I care about you too," she said, her voice barely audible over the rain. "I've been trying not to. I've been fighting it, but I do. You make me want to be the person I used to be." Aaron's face transformed, hope and joy and tenderness washing over his features. "You don't have to be who you used to be. The person you are now is pretty wonderful too, maybe just a little less scared." He stood and pulled her gently to her feet. In the flickering candlelight, with the storm raging outside, he cupped her face in his hands and looked at her like she was something precious. "Can I kiss you?" Adelaide's breath caught. She had not been kissed in years, had convinced herself she did not want or need such things. But standing here with Aaron, his hands warm against her skin and his eyes full of affection, she realized how much she had been denying herself. "Yes." He kissed her softly, carefully, like he was afraid she might break. His lips were warm and gentle, asking rather than demanding. Adelaide felt something inside her shift and settle, like a piece of herself she had lost finally clicking back into place. When they pulled apart, she was crying again, but this time not from pain, from relief, from the overwhelming feeling of being seen and valued and cared for. "I've got you," Aaron murmured, pulling her into his arms. "I've got you, and I'm not letting go." They stood like that for a long time, holding each other while the storm gradually subsided. When the rain finally slowed to a drizzle and the thunder moved off into the distance, Aaron walked Adelaide upstairs to her apartment. He kissed her once more at her door, sweet and lingering, before heading home through the wet streets. Adelaide went to bed that night feeling lighter than she had in 3 years. The walls around her heart had not crumbled entirely, but Aaron had definitely opened a door, and she was beginning to think she might be ready to step through it. Their courtship, once acknowledged, progressed with the same steady patience Aaron showed in everything. He took her to dinner at the hotel restaurant, walked with her in the evenings when the store closed, brought her flowers he picked from the mountain meadows. Simple things, but each gesture chipped away at Adelaide's remaining defenses. She found herself laughing again, something she had thought she might never do. Aaron had a quiet sense of humor that crept up on her. Observations about customers or stories about his horse that struck her as funny when she least expected it. The sound of her own laughter startled her at first, rusty from disuse, but Aaron's face would light up every time he heard it, which made her want to laugh more. The town noticed the change. How could they not? Adelaide Grace was smiling, actually smiling and walking arm in arm with Aaron Lawson like it was the most natural thing in the world. The gossips had a field day, but for once Adelaide did not care. Let them talk. She was happy, genuinely happy, and she refused to let other people's opinions steal that from her. "You look different," Mrs. Patterson said one September afternoon, her voice approving. "Softer somehow. Happy." "I am happy," Adelaide admitted, and saying it aloud felt like a revelation. "I'm glad. You deserve it after everything." Mrs. Patterson hesitated, then added, "Your father would be happy too, you know. He always wanted you to find someone good." The mention of her father still hurt, but the pain had dulled to an ache rather than the sharp agony it had once been. "I think he would have liked Aaron. I think he would have liked anyone who made you smile like that." That evening, Aaron came to pick Adelaide up for a picnic supper he had planned. They rode on his horse together, Adelaide sitting in front of him with his arms around her, up into the foothills where the aspens were beginning to turn gold. He had chosen a spot near a creek with a view of the valley spread out below, the setting sun painting everything in shades of amber and rose. They ate cold chicken and fresh bread and peach preserves, talking about everything and nothing. Aaron told her about his childhood on a small ranch in Wyoming, how he had lost his parents to fever when he was 18 and had been working cattle drives ever since. Adelaide talked about her mother, who had died when she was 12, and how she and her father had been a team running the store together. "I miss him every day," she said, watching the sun sink lower. "But it's different now. The missing doesn't swallow me whole anymore." "That's grief," Aaron said gently. "It never really goes away. It just becomes part of you instead of all of you." They sat in comfortable silence as the stars began appearing, bright points against the darkening sky. Aaron's arm was around her shoulders and Adelaide leaned into his warmth, feeling safe in a way she had not felt in years. "I want to ask you something," Aaron said, "but I don't want you to feel pressured. If the answer is no or not yet, that's all right." Adelaide's heart began beating faster. "What is it?" He shifted so he could look at her properly. In the twilight, his eyes were serious and tender. "I love you, Adelaide. I've loved you for months now, probably since the first day I walked into your store and you yelled at me about muddy boots. You're strong and brave and beautiful, and spending time with you is the best part of every day." He took her hand. "I want to marry you. I want to build a life with you, wake up next to you every morning, help you run the store, maybe have children someday if you want them. But only if that's what you want too. I won't push you into anything you're not ready for." Adelaide felt tears spilling down her cheeks, but they were good tears. Happy tears. "I love you too. I think I've loved you since you came back after I fainted and forced me to eat, treating me like I mattered, like I was worth taking care of." She squeezed his hand. "Yes, yes, I'll marry you." Aaron's face broke into the biggest smile she had ever seen from him. He kissed her deeply, pouring all his love and joy into it, and Adelaide kissed him back with equal fervor. When they finally pulled apart, both breathing hard, he pressed his forehead against hers. "You've made me the happiest man in Utah," he said. "Maybe in the whole world." "When?" Adelaide asked. "When should we get married?" "Whenever you want. Tomorrow, next month, next year. I'm not going anywhere." "October," Adelaide decided. "After the autumn rush but before winter sets in. Give me time to make arrangements." "October it is." They rode back to town under the stars, Adelaide feeling like she was floating. When Aaron left her at her door, he kissed her goodnight and promised to come by in the morning to start planning their future. Adelaide went upstairs and stood at her window, looking out at the quiet street and the mountains beyond. She felt her father's presence, not as the painful absence that had haunted her for 3 years, but as a warm memory and a blessing. He would be happy for her. He would like Aaron. And he would be proud that she had found her way back to living instead of just surviving. The next few weeks were a whirlwind of preparations. Adelaide wanted a small ceremony, just close friends and neighbors, but even a small wedding required planning. She bought fabric and made herself a simple but beautiful dress in cream-colored cotton with delicate embroidery. Aaron arranged for the Methodist minister to perform the ceremony and secured a small house on the edge of town for them to live in, a cozy place with 3 rooms and a garden plot. Mrs. Patterson and several other women helped Adelaide prepare the wedding supper, insisting it was tradition and that she could not do everything herself. Adelaide accepted their help with grace, no longer needing to prove her independence by refusing assistance. She was learning that accepting help did not make her weak. It made her part of a community. The morning of the wedding in mid-October arrived clear and cool, the aspens blazing gold on the mountainsides. Adelaide dressed carefully in her new dress, pinning her dark hair up in a softer style than her usual severe bun. When she looked in the mirror, she barely recognized herself. The hard, closed-off woman who had stared back at her for 3 years was gone, replaced by someone who looked young and hopeful and happy. She walked to the church alone, by choice, carrying a small bouquet of wildflowers Aaron had picked for her that morning. The church was full of familiar faces, people who had watched her struggle and grieve and slowly come back to life. They smiled at her with genuine warmth, happy to see her happiness. And at the front of the church stood Aaron, wearing his best clothes and looking nervous and proud and so full of love that Adelaide felt her heart swell. This good man had seen past her walls to the person underneath. He had been patient when she pushed him away, kind when she was cold, steady when she was afraid. He had melted her defenses with nothing but consistent, genuine care. She walked down the aisle toward him, toward her future, toward the life she had thought she could never have again. When she took his hand, his fingers wrapped around hers with gentle certainty. The minister spoke about love and commitment, about building a life together through good times and hard times. Adelaide barely heard the words. She was too busy looking at Aaron, memorizing this moment, feeling grateful beyond measure that he had walked into her store 6 months ago and refused to give up on her. "I do," she said when the minister asked if she would take Aaron as her husband. "I do," Aaron said when asked if he would take Adelaide as his wife. "Then by the power vested in me, I pronounce you husband and wife. You may kiss your bride." Aaron cupped her face in his hands and kissed her softly, sweetly, while the small congregation cheered. When they pulled apart, both were crying happy tears. They walked back down the aisle together, husband and wife, and Adelaide felt more complete than she had in years. The reception was held in the church hall, filled with food and laughter and music. Adelaide danced with Aaron, properly this time, swaying together while their friends and neighbors clapped and celebrated. "Happy," Aaron murmured in her ear. "Incredibly happy," Adelaide answered. "Thank you for not giving up on me. Thank you for taking a chance on me." That night, Aaron carried Adelaide over the threshold of their new home. He had furnished it simply but comfortably, adding touches he knew she would like. Good lamps for reading, a solid desk for her paperwork, sturdy furniture that would last. In the bedroom, he set her down gently and kissed her with building passion. "I love you," he whispered against her lips. "I'll love you until the day I die, and probably after that too." "I love you too," Adelaide said, unbuttoning his vest with trembling fingers. "Show me how much." Their wedding night was tender and passionate, Aaron treating her like something precious, taking his time to learn what made her sigh with pleasure. Adelaide had never felt so cherished, so completely loved. Afterward, they lay tangled together in their marriage bed, talking quietly about their plans and dreams. "I want to expand the store," Adelaide said, tracing patterns on Aaron's chest. "Add on a section for farm equipment. There's demand for it." "That's a good idea. I can help build the addition when spring comes. And I want us to be partners, not just in marriage but in the business. I'm tired of doing everything alone." "Whatever you want," Aaron said, kissing her temple. "I'm with you in everything." They fell asleep wrapped around each other, warm and safe and loved. The first year of their marriage was an adjustment, as Adelaide learned to share her space and her life with another person. But Aaron made it easy. He was naturally tidy, did his share of the cooking and cleaning, and understood when she needed time alone to work on the books. They settled into comfortable rhythms, operating the store together during the day and spending evenings at home, talking and reading and simply enjoying each other's company. Aaron officially became her business partner, and his influence was immediately apparent. Customers who had found Adelaide too cold and abrupt responded well to Aaron's warm friendliness. Sales increased. The store's reputation improved. Adelaide found she did not mind sharing the responsibility. In fact, having Aaron's support made everything easier. In February of 1885, Adelaide realized she was pregnant. The discovery filled her with joy and terror in equal measure. She wanted a child, Aaron's child, but pregnancy and childbirth were dangerous. Women died. Babies died. The thought of losing either Aaron or a child terrified her. Aaron found her crying at the kitchen table one evening and immediately knelt beside her chair. "What's wrong? Are you hurt?" "I'm pregnant," Adelaide said through her tears. Aaron's face went through several expressions in quick succession: surprise, joy, wonder, and then concern when he realized she was crying. "That's wonderful, isn't it? I thought you wanted children." "I do, I'm just scared. So many things can go wrong." He pulled her into his arms. "I know. But you're strong and healthy. We'll get the best midwife in town. I'll take care of you every step of the way. We'll face whatever comes together." His steady confidence helped calm her fears. Over the following months, Adelaide's body changed and grew. Aaron was attentive and patient, taking over her heavier work at the store, making sure she rested and ate well. He talked to her growing belly every night, telling their child stories and jokes, and the obvious love in his voice made Adelaide fall even more deeply in love with him. She went into labor on a warm September evening in 1885, about a week before her baby was due. Aaron fetched the midwife while Adelaide tried not to panic. Labor was long and painful, testing her strength and resolve. Aaron stayed by her side the entire time, holding her hand, wiping her forehead, whispering encouragement when she was certain she could not continue. "You can do this," he told her during a particularly hard contraction. "You're the strongest person I know, just a little more." At dawn, their son was born, small and red-faced and squalling with impressive lung power. Adelaide held him against her chest and cried with relief and overwhelming love. "He's perfect," Aaron said, his own eyes wet as he looked at his son. "You're both perfect." They named him Thomas James Lawson, after both their fathers. Thomas was a healthy baby with his father's blue eyes and his mother's dark hair. Adelaide fell completely in love, amazed that she could feel this much devotion for such a tiny person. Motherhood changed her in ways she had not expected. The fierce protectiveness she had developed after her father's death found a new focus in keeping Thomas safe and loved. But loving her son also taught her that protection did not have to mean isolation. Aaron was an involved, loving father who changed diapers and walked the floor during fussy nights and made funny faces to elicit baby giggles. Their family was a team, working together, and Adelaide realized this was what safety actually looked like. Not walls that kept everyone out, but people who loved each other supporting and protecting one another. Time passed in the way it does for happy families. Thomas grew from a baby to a toddler, learning to walk and talk and get into everything. The store continued to prosper. Aaron built the addition Adelaide had wanted, and the farm equipment section became their best revenue source. They hired help, 2 young men who did deliveries and heavy lifting, which freed Adelaide and Aaron to focus on management and customer relationships. In the fall of 1887, Adelaide gave birth to their second child, a daughter they named Caroline Rose. She had Aaron's smile and Adelaide's determination, even as a baby. Thomas was fascinated by his little sister, constantly wanting to help take care of her. Adelaide stood at the window of their home one evening in early 1888, watching Aaron play with both children in the front yard. Thomas was 3 now, running circles around his father, while Aaron held baby Caroline in one arm and chased Thomas with the other, making exaggerated roaring sounds that sent Thomas into peals of laughter. She thought about the woman she had been when Aaron first walked into her store. Cold. Closed. Convinced that the only way to survive was to never let anyone close. She had been wrong. Not about the danger of trusting blindly, she had learned that lesson too well, but about shutting everyone out. Aaron had shown her that trust could be earned, that not everyone would betray her. That opening her heart again was not weakness but the greatest courage. He had been patient with her fears, kind in the face of her coldness, steady when she pushed him away. He had melted her walls not through grand gestures but through consistent, genuine care. Day after day, week after week, he had simply been there, reliable and loving, until she could no longer deny what he offered. She thought about her father, who had raised her to be strong but also kind, independent but also connected to community. For 3 years after his death, she had honored only the strength and independence, forgetting that he had also valued connection. But now she understood. True strength was not building walls. True strength was being vulnerable enough to love people, knowing you might lose them, but loving them anyway because life without love was not really living. "Mama," Thomas shouted, spotting her in the window. "Come play." Adelaide smiled and went outside, joining her family. Aaron pulled her close with his free arm, kissing her temple while Thomas tugged on her skirt and Caroline gurgled happily. "I love you," Aaron said quietly, for her ears only. "I love you too. Thank you for not giving up on me." "Best decision I ever made," he said, and she could hear the absolute sincerity in his voice. Years continued to pass in a blur of happiness and hard work. Thomas and Caroline grew into bright, confident children. In 1890, Adelaide gave birth to their third child, another boy they named David. The store expanded again, adding a section for women's clothing and accessories that Adelaide designed and sourced herself. They became one of the most successful businesses in Provo, known for fair prices and excellent customer service. Aaron's patient kindness had not been reserved only for Adelaide. He extended it to everyone he met, and it created goodwill that paid dividends in loyalty and reputation. People came from miles around specifically to shop at the Grace and Lawson General Store, as it was now called, because they knew they would be treated well. Adelaide had become a pillar of the community, though nothing like the cold, isolated woman she had been. She organized charity drives for families in need, remembering how her father had always believed in helping others. She mentored young women starting their own businesses, teaching them the practical skills she had learned. She was still serious when it came to business, still meticulous with her accounting, but the coldness had melted away entirely, replaced by warmth that drew people to her rather than driving them away. On their 10th wedding anniversary in October of 1895, Aaron took Adelaide back to the spot in the foothills where he had proposed. The aspens were golden again, just as they had been that evening, and the view of the valley was unchanged. But everything else was different. 10 years, Aaron said, holding her hand as they looked out over the vista. Feels like it went by in a moment. Also feels like you've always been part of my life. I was thinking about when we met, Adelaide said, how hostile I was, how determined not to let anyone close. You should have given up on me. I never wanted to give up on you. Even at your coldest, I could see the hurt underneath, and hurt can heal if you give it time and care. He turned her to face him. You've made me so happy, Adelaide. Every single day with you is a gift. You saved me, Adelaide said, cupping his face. I was drowning and did not even know it. You threw me a line and pulled me back to life. We saved each other. I was drifting before I met you, going from job to job with no real purpose. You gave me something to care about. Someone to build a life with. He kissed her softly. Here's to the next 10 years and the 10 after that and all the years until we're old and gray. Until we're old and gray, Adelaide echoed and kissed him back. They returned to town as the sun set, riding Aaron's horse together, just as they had 11 years ago, when he had still been trying to convince her to take a chance. Adelaide leaned back against his chest, feeling his heartbeat steady and strong, and thought about how much courage it had taken for him to keep trying with her. How much faith he had shown in believing she could change. That faith had been rewarded. She had changed, or perhaps more accurately, she had healed. The wounds her father's death had left had finally scarred over, still tender sometimes but no longer bleeding. She had learned to live again, to love again, to open her heart despite the risks. Their children grew into teenagers, each with their own personalities and dreams. Thomas wanted to take over the store someday, showing his mother's head for business combined with his father's easy way with people. Caroline talked about becoming a teacher, inspired by the woman who taught at Provo School. David, the youngest, was fascinated by horses and ranching, spending every spare moment at the nearby stables. Aaron and Adelaide supported all their children's ambitions, teaching them to work hard but also to value kindness and integrity. They raised them with the lessons both had learned. That strength and compassion were not opposites but partners. That trust had to be earned but was worth giving once earned. That family and community mattered more than money or success. In 1900, as the new century began, Adelaide and Aaron celebrated their 15th anniversary. They had added another child to their family in 1897, a daughter named Elizabeth who was the baby and knew it, wrapping her father around her tiny finger with ease. The store was thriving beyond anything Adelaide had imagined when she had been running it alone, grief-stricken and isolated. But more than business success, Adelaide treasured the life she and Aaron had built. The family dinners filled with laughter and conversation. The quiet evenings when the children were finally in bed and she and Aaron could sit together, talking about their day. The way he still looked at her like she was the most beautiful woman in the world. The way her heart still skipped when he smiled. They had challenges, of course. No life was without them. There were years when business was slow, when drought hurt the ranchers who were their best customers. There were childhood illnesses that terrified them both until the fever broke and the child recovered. There were disagreements and arguments because two strong-willed people did not always see eye to eye. But they faced everything together, the way Aaron had promised they would on that stormy night when Adelaide had finally admitted her feelings. They were partners in the truest sense, supporting each other through difficulties and celebrating each other's triumphs. On a spring morning in 1905, Adelaide was working in the store when Thomas, now almost 20, came to her with news. He had met a young woman at church, a newcomer to Provo whose family had moved from Colorado. He wanted to court her seriously, with marriage in mind. Adelaide looked at her son, seeing so much of Aaron in his honest blue eyes and steady demeanor, and felt a pang of recognition. "Tell me about her." Thomas's face lit up as he described Emily, a young woman who was smart and kind and shared his dream of running a business. Adelaide listened and smiled, remembering another young man who had seen past her defenses to the person underneath. "Does she make you happy?" Adelaide asked. "So happy, Mother. When I'm with her, everything feels right." "Then you have my blessing," Adelaide said, hugging her son. "Love is the most important thing. Everything else can be worked out." Thomas married Emily in the fall of that year, and Adelaide and Aaron became in-laws, then a year later grandparents when Emily gave birth to a healthy boy. Holding her grandson for the first time, Adelaide thought about the journey that had brought her to this moment. From the cold, broken woman who had sworn never to trust again, to a wife and mother and grandmother surrounded by love, it had not been easy. Healing never was, but Aaron had shown her it was possible. Through his steady kindness, his patient persistence, his refusal to give up on her, he had taught her that walls were not the answer. That love, despite its risks, was worth it. The years rolled on, bringing more changes and more joys. Caroline became a teacher as she had dreamed, inspiring her students the way she had been inspired. David started a horse ranch with Aaron's help, breeding quality animals that were sought after throughout Utah. Elizabeth, the baby, surprised everyone by showing a talent for business that rivaled her mother's, taking on more responsibility at the store as she grew. Adelaide and Aaron grew older together, their hair turning gray, lines deepening around their eyes, but their love never diminishing. If anything, it deepened with time, the initial passion maturing into something even stronger. They knew each other completely now, every quirk and flaw and virtue. They had weathered storms together and celebrated triumphs together. They were not just lovers but best friends, partners in all things. On their 30th anniversary, in October of 1915, their children threw them a surprise party at the church hall. It seemed like half of Provo turned out to celebrate the couple who had built one of the town's most successful businesses and raised 4 wonderful children. There were speeches and toasts, stories shared about Aaron's kindness and Adelaide's strength. But what Adelaide remembered most was the moment when Aaron pulled her onto the dance floor. Just like that first night at the Pioneer Day celebration, 31 years ago, when she had been so certain she would never be happy again. "Still terrible at dancing," she said with a smile as they swayed together. "Still don't care," Aaron replied, pulling her closer. They danced slowly, surrounded by their children and grandchildren, friends and neighbors, the community they had become such an important part of. Adelaide looked up at her husband's face, weathered now but still the kindest face she knew, and felt overwhelming gratitude. "Thank you," she said quietly. "For what?" "For seeing who I could be when I couldn't see it myself, for being patient, for loving me even when I was determined not to be loved." Aaron's eyes grew misty. "Loving you was the easiest thing I've ever done. Being patient was worth it for this, for everything we have." He kissed her forehead. "You were never too cold or too serious, Adelaide. You were hurt. And hurt people need kindness, not judgment. I'm just grateful you let me be the one to show you kindness." "You melted my walls," Adelaide said. "With your steady, relentless kindness, you melted every defense I had built. You saved my life, Aaron Lawson." "You saved mine right back," Aaron said. "We saved each other. That's what love does." They continued dancing as the night wore on, celebrating 3 decades of marriage and the lifetime still ahead of them. Their children watched with smiles, having grown up seeing the love between their parents, learning from their example that real love was not grand gestures but daily choice. The choice to be kind, the choice to be patient, the choice to see the best in someone even when they showed you their worst. Adelaide Grace Lawson, once the coldest, most isolated woman in Provo, had become known instead for her warmth and generosity. The change had not happened overnight. It had taken years of Aaron's steady kindness, years of learning to trust again, years of letting the walls around her heart come down brick by brick. But it had happened. And standing in the church hall, surrounded by love, dancing with the man who had never given up on her, Adelaide knew with absolute certainty that opening her heart again had been the bravest and best thing she had ever done. The story could have ended there, with the anniversary celebration and the acknowledgement of how far Adelaide had come. But life was not about endings. It was about continuing, about the daily choice to love and be loved. Adelaide and Aaron had many more years together. They watched their children's children grow up, welcomed great-grandchildren in their later years. The store passed to Thomas and Emily, who ran it with the same integrity and care their parents had shown. Aaron's horse ranch became David's passion and livelihood. Caroline touched countless young lives through her teaching. Elizabeth eventually opened her own business, a dress shop that became quite successful. Through it all, Adelaide and Aaron remained the center of their family, the foundation upon which everything else was built. Their love story became legendary in Provo, the tale of the cold woman and the patient cowboy who melted her walls with steady kindness. Young couples sought their advice. Struggling marriages looked to their example. On a warm June evening in 1925, Aaron suffered a heart attack while working in their garden. He died quickly, with Adelaide holding his hand, surrounded by their children. He was 66 years old and had lived a good, full life. His last words were, "I love you," directed at Adelaide, and she believed him completely because he had proven it every single day for 40 years. Adelaide was devastated by his death. After 4 decades together, losing Aaron felt like losing part of herself. But she did not retreat behind walls again. She grieved openly, surrounded by family and friends who loved her. She told stories about Aaron at his funeral, celebrating his life rather than just mourning his death. She cried and laughed and remembered, letting herself feel all the emotions rather than shutting them away. It hurt terribly. But it was a clean hurt, like a wound that bleeds but will eventually heal, not the festering pain she had carried after her father's death. Aaron had taught her that grief was the price of love, and love was always worth the price. Adelaide lived another 15 years without Aaron, dying peacefully in her sleep in 1940 at the age of 79. In those years, she remained active in her family's lives, watching great-great-grandchildren be born, offering wisdom to anyone who asked, and always talking about Aaron with love and gratitude. On her deathbed, surrounded by multiple generations of the family she and Aaron had created, one of her great-granddaughters asked her what the secret was to a happy life. Adelaide thought for a long moment, her mind traveling back over 8 decades of living. She thought about the cold, isolated woman she had been at 23, convinced that walls were safety. She thought about Aaron walking into her store that spring day in 1884, tracking mud across her clean floor and apologizing sincerely. She thought about every small kindness he had shown her, every patient word, every moment he had demonstrated that love was not a weakness but a strength. "The secret," she said finally, her voice weak but clear, "is letting people in. It's scary because people can hurt you, but they can also heal you if you give them the chance. Find someone who sees the real you, even when you're hiding behind walls. Someone who is kind not just when it's easy but when it's hard. Someone who chooses you every day in all the small ways that matter. And when you find that person, be brave enough to choose them back." She paused, gathering her strength for a few more words. "I was so afraid after my father died. I thought being alone was the only way to be safe, but Aaron showed me that being alone was just another way of dying. He gave me back my life with his kindness, taught me that love was worth the risk, and oh, it was worth it. Every moment was worth it." Those were among Adelaide's last coherent words. She drifted into sleep a few hours later and never woke up, passing peacefully from this life to whatever came next. Her family buried her next to Aaron in the Provo Cemetery, under a large headstone that read, "Adelaide Grace Lawson, 1861–1940. Beloved wife, mother, grandmother." She learned that walls are not safety, love is. The store they had built together continued for generations, run by their descendants. The house where they had raised their children became a family gathering place, filled with memories and love. Their story was passed down through the family, becoming the foundation myth that defined what the Lawsons believed about love and life. Because Adelaide and Aaron's story was not just about two people falling in love. It was about what love could do, how it could heal, how it could transform. How steady kindness could melt even the thickest walls and bring warmth back to the coldest heart. They said she was too serious and cold, that woman who ran the general store in Provo with an iron will and a heart locked behind walls. But a cowboy saw past the ice to the hurt underneath. He chose kindness over judgment, patience over frustration, steady persistence over giving up. And slowly, day by day, moment by moment, he melted those walls and helped her find her way back to life and love. It was not a story of grand gestures or dramatic declarations. It was a story of small, consistent acts of care, of showing up, of being reliable, of seeing someone at their worst and still believing in their best, of loving not despite flaws but alongside them. In the end, Adelaide Grace's transformation from cold isolation to warm connection was not a miracle. It was simply what happened when someone hurt found someone kind and brave enough to love them anyway. And that, perhaps, was the most important lesson of all, that everyone deserves kindness. That walls are built for protection, but can become prisons. That the greatest courage is not in staying safe but in risking your heart again, even after it's been broken. Adelaide and Aaron Lawson's love story ended the way all love stories eventually do, with death separating what life had joined. But the love itself never ended. It lived on in their children and grandchildren, in the business they had built, in the community they had served, in the example they had set of what love could be when it was patient and kind and true. And somewhere beyond this life, if such things exist, perhaps Adelaide and Aaron found each other again. Perhaps they danced together once more, no longer separated by walls or fear or even death. Just two souls who had recognized each other across the distances that divided them and chosen, again and again, to come together in love. That was the real secret. Not that Aaron had melted Adelaide's walls, though he had, but that she had let him. That despite her fear and pain and determination to stay safe, she had been brave enough to take the risk. To open the door he kept knocking on. To step out from behind her defenses and let herself be loved. And in doing so, she had not just saved herself. She had created something beautiful. A family, a legacy, a life worth living. All because one cowboy saw past her coldness to the warmth buried underneath and refused to give up until she could see it too.